Welcome! This video is an attempt at offering a narrative-centered analysis on the Outer Worlds. This is the first time I'm making a video analysis on a game, so take everything I say with a grain of salt and indulge me in my lack of structure, cohesion, and the internet's favorite, broken English pronunciation. Instead of analyzing everything from UI design to science weapons to individual quests, as if I'm God or Joseph Anderson, I will keep my focus as narrow as possible. The timestamps in the description will offer a one-sentence summary of each section, so feel free to skip ahead if you are losing interest. You can also find links to any references I make or any videos I've used other than my own gameplay. Nobody should play the Outer Worlds expecting a Fallout New Vegas in space. Not only is this expectation wrong, but it also does great disservice to Obsidian and to the world building they've done. Shortly before this video was released, it was announced that the Outer Worlds was in second place in October sales, behind Call of Duty, and I'm so happy and proud of Obsidian. This is its own game, and not only many players had problems before release acknowledging this, but Obsidian itself seems to have forgotten that during development, which will be the main focus of our video.
It's not the best choice, it's Spacer's choice.
So, this is what the title means essentially. I believe that some of the plot and gameplay elements of the Outer Worlds were either weakened or obstructed by overcommitting to the positive features which defined Fallout New Vegas. I will point out these features to the best of my ability as we discern what made New Vegas great versus what can work in the Outer Worlds. The distinction is important because while some features of Fallout New Vegas were instrumental in its success, they prevented the Outer Worlds from becoming its own game and damaged its structure. I haven't played the Knights of the Old Republic or Tyranny. I have played Pillars of Eternity and all the Fallout games, though the internet's average playtime of Fallout New Vegas is probably double of what I have. I have a man crush for Tim Kaine and Leonard Boyarsky and highly recommend watching their interviews. As for the Outer Worlds itself, I finished the game twice, and after revisiting the game to record additional footage, I am at around 40 hours. One playthrough as a charismatic gunslinger, which I'm sure nobody has ever tried out, and other as a hammer-wielding dump guy. Dump with a capital D. Before I find additional reasons to buy myself more time, one last thing. If you have not played the Outer Worlds but are still here, then I strongly recommend playing the game. I loved it so much that it pushed me over the edge to come up with a cohesive analysis to repair its fundamental flaws. I don't remember laughing at a game this much, not because it was haha throw a pie in your face funny, but because how smart it was when being funny. The core gameplay is nothing to remember the game by, but I don't mind it because it is a brand new game. Jeez, it's been almost 4 minutes already. Let's just get the spoiler warning going and start this. Leonard Boyarsky said in an interview that, paraphrasing him, people had no expectations when Fallout New Vegas was released, but now with the Outer Worlds they do, and it is intimidating. The developers constantly had to state that this was not New Vegas in space, that it was a game smaller in scale, it was an open world, and so on. I was relieved by this, as I wanted Obsidian making their own game. I wanted them to be ambitious, like Pillars of Eternity. Compared to several years ago, Obsidian is now better off in terms of income and has an experienced staff. I expected an original piece with original themes, a plot befitting the setting, warring factions in form of different corporations and brands. It should start feeling familiar to people living in the 21st century. I expected to cry at the inhumanity as much as I laughed at the dialogue choices. While some of these were satisfied, I was disappointed in Obsidian when the game opened with black and white narration followed by a disconnect between some of its core gameplay mechanics, and concluded with a failed realization of the Battle of Hoover Dam in space. Even now, I cannot be bothered to use the word Tartarus instead of Hoover Dam. This is not because I thought this would be New Vegas in space. This is because they thought so. I will explain everything I've said bit by bit, but for now, let's start with Edgewater, the first town we visit in the game. This first section is going to be a little sloppy, and I will have a hard time just coming to my point, so I hope you stick around for a bit. In Edgewater, the ultimate choice is between the corporate cannery and its deserted workers, which makes sense in a video game about oppressive corporate rule. I cannot explain every detail in a video already too long, so those who have not played the game are out of luck. You must choose between these factions because you need a power generator for your ship, and both are in possession of one. My initial game plan was to cut power to the deserters, then convince them to come back to the town and work a compromise, because it felt the right thing to do. I felt great relief when I realized this was possible in the game. Sadly, this is also where I first realized that Obsidian took Fallout New Vegas too literally when they made the Outer Worlds. While I was happy that the game gave him that choice, the formula felt too familiar. Help the incumbent body of governance, help the rebellious instigators, or mediate a compromise between them. While this wasn't true for Goodsprings, it was a feature of New Vegas that if you had enough dialogue skills, you could convince everyone to do everything. Adhering to this formula, that there are hidden and better ways to complete quests, made Edgewater lose a lot of gravity. Why? Well, it felt only common sense to merge both factions anyway, and doing anything else would be stupid, regardless of your political beliefs. The cannery needs the manpower of the deserters, and the latter need proper infrastructure to survive in the long term. Not only that, but the innocent workers and colonists and all those people ill with the plague in the town of Edgewater are getting screwed over for nothing, should you choose to help the deserters by cutting Edgewater's power. While this is a radical revolutionary way to do things, ignoring the established rights of common people for a greater goal, here it feels stupid and forced. The botanist Adelaide holding an entire town at ransom just because she has this beef with Reed Thompson just made me detest her even more, despite the circumstances surrounding her son's death. While Obsidian tried to pull a New Vegas by providing an additional ending with a dialogue skill check, I really did not enjoy sending Reed Thompson away just so that the most talented botanist around could have things her own way feeding the town. The priority was given to mechanics and not narrative cohesion. And speaking of dialogue skills, we have to make a quick stop before we continue with narrative cohesion and why it makes no sense to side with either faction. While The Outer Worlds is a great video game milestone in terms of dialogue content, I have to remind everybody that the dialogue skills are becoming much more of a necessity than a choice. While the additional XP you gain from persuading someone is still not significant, players feel compelled to give points in them due to fear of missing out on not only dialogue content but quests as well. There is no combat versus personality skills dilemma because it is objectively better to invest in non-combat skills. Dishing out extra damage can never match finding secrets or revealing choices in dialogue. In addition to this, for those who focus on dialogue skills have such an easy time playing the game that you are faced with the following choice. You can give points in dialogue skills, gain access to not only smart and funny content, but also ways to gain more XP or to see just what's going to happen. But if you want these, then you also have to accept that the game will be easy. Increased emphasis on these mechanics create an exclusivity of funny, smart, increased amount of content and a game with proper challenge. Let's head back to Edgewater. So far, only mediating a compromise makes sense. Siding with Adelaide is not emancipatory politics or anything, but it is downright awful. I wish mediating would be the main option, but doing smaller things for Adelaide or Reed Thompson could fall under the choosing a faction formula. How about siding with Reed Thompson, i.e. the board? Well, even in the introduction cutscene, when the player is in Cyrus sleep, we can see Phineas talking about how the board is a whole bunch of assholes and how people suffer. The player has not seen Halcyon yet, mind you. He brainwashes you about how they must be stopped and then suddenly sends you off to Edgewater so you can start playing the game. The image of the board is hardly better in Edgewater. Groundbreaker is hell because the board won't give materials. Monarch was abandoned to die, basically. Our last memory is before Halcyon, and the game expects you to make informed decisions after Phineas trashes the board and shows how shitty the cannery is. Unless the player is a maniac, they have little reason to side with the board and sell Phineas out. Instead of the twist about Phineas killing many people on hope to get the Cyrus sleep awakening right, the game could have shown why Phineas is the Pablo Escobar of Halcyon, so we have a reason to hate and betray him. Unless I roleplayed as Jeff Bezos, I couldn't side with any corporation. It made no sense. In Good Springs, siding with the Powder Gangers makes sense, because it is assumed that the player knows about the New Vegas area, they were a courier before, and might hate the guts of Good Springs even though Doc Mitchell saved them. Unlike the Outer Worlds, factions are gray rather than black and white, which we will come in a moment. Why can't I find another power generator later on, bring it back to Adelaide so both the Gardens and Edgewater could be powered? Why are all these corporate guards okay with Adelaide bossing them around? The board's quest about killing Edgewater because they have a different leader now is absolute bonkers, serves only to trash the board, and Obsidian is trying to buy some time before the main quest ends. Why is there no other way to get Reed Thompson to leave other than dialogue and cold-blooded murder? He himself says that he won't survive out there for more than a week. Please tell me if there is another way. How about coming here later down the line, using 100 signs to prop together another power generator? It could have been the perfect homage to the tutorial town the player completed levels ago. It's not that we have a reason to come back to Edgewater anyway. These things certainly sound like something Obsidian could have done. Anyway, it is time we speak about the other parts of the game and delve deeper into morality in the Outer Worlds. Obsidian made sure each area had people to help from all sides of the spectrum, that each area was a melting pot, and that with enough persuasion, you could make everybody win, or win everybody. Instead of finding a method which works for the Outer Worlds itself, they stuck to the Fallout New Vegas formula. Obsidian loves and excels at creating linear stories, and not every fiction has to have grey morality to be good. Perhaps they lack the confidence to have trust in themselves to create a linear black and white story. Here, they created a narrative based on good guys versus bad guys, but they use the Fallout New Vegas formula of aha, they are not superficial, they are grey, they are people. The game expects you to react to these twists, but they don't work. I barely feel involved. In the Outer Worlds, helping the board or the rebels out is unreasonable, as they are either very stupid in their arguments or are basically Hitler. Graham of the Iconoclasts is one of these characters who is both. Thank God he can be replaced with Zora. Not because Graham attacked a passenger ship in secret to incite conflict before, I get it, it's at least a sly trick, but because he speaks nothing but nonsense and makes his followers look stupid as well. Zora is a terrific woman. She's smart, she's capable, of course you should make her the leader. Sanjar is a decent guy too, so why not mediate a compromise between them? What reason do you have to support Graham completely? or wipe out the iconoclasts and guarantee that the wildlife will kill everyone on Monarch. People said they loved the morality factor in Fallout New Vegas, so Obsidian built a game around interacting with people and making choices. Everybody has something to say. Everyone is a vessel of morality, waiting to be dissected. And twists happen, right? Then why are people so black and white in the Outer Worlds? Why is the board awful at every turn, but all the rebels have redeeming qualities to them? They reminded themselves to make each faction distinct, but fell short on explaining why they are distinct. I feel like I'm deciding between anarchism and Nazi Germany, and when the option is present to mediate parties, I feel like a bored adult trying to break up kids for 1,000th time. Again, Graham's twist was in order and gave a lot of insight on the Sanjar Graham Zora trio, but you don't get moved by it because you're busy contemplating the idiocy of many people. Even at the highest echelons of the board, when push comes to shove, when everything reaches a breaking point, the only thing Adjutant Akande can say is, "Oh, the board has made mistakes, but we will make amends, we will fix everything," and so on. Nothing comes even close to half of what Caesar said about himself, the NCR, or Hegelian dialectics. Persuading Legate Lanius at the end, talking about how the Legion's greatest strength, its size, is also its greatest weakness and so on, had 10 times the gravity of speaking with Phineas or Akande at the end. And this is not because Lanius is cooler or anything, because it doesn't fit in the Outer Worlds. While some people considered NCR and the Legion to be black and white, a closer inspection did reveal a lot about what makes the Legion at least acceptable. They have crucifixion, sure, but have you seen a single raider in Caesar's territory? They are a bunch of weeaboos, sure, but how can you prefer the decadent liberal culture of the NCR, which caused the Great War in the first place, whereas Rome built the Western civilization as we know it? Reed Thompson is one of the saints when it comes to corporations. She thanks you, and nothing is done to help her consolidate power or help the board integrate Groundbreaker. There are 2 endings for the Groundbreaker, but they feel coincidental at best. Also, apparently Udon Bedford loves being Stalin and refuses to help repair the ship he works on and lives in. Obsidian as usual wanted to do what they did so well with Fallout New Vegas when it comes to factions. They are everywhere. Each and every area has a faction conflict. All sides have flaws and inconsistencies. No system is perfect or abjectly superior to one another. Then why is the gameplay based around this but the narrative so black and white and at times so restrictive of independent thinking? While we have come to accept that Obsidian is well acquainted with factions and reputation systems, the Outer Worlds have shown me that they are not. Bear with me as I remind you the title of this video again. The faction system worked in New Vegas because having a reputation mattered, because you could see the factions actively fighting one another and change over time, and the whole setting was about the supremacy over New Vegas area. This interactivity is lost throughout the game, and the high-stakes premise kicks in only at the very end. Obsidian believed that the faction system of Fallout New Vegas was something they had done great, and they absorbed it as a mainstay feature. Unfortunately, not only they did nothing to expand on this system, but also failed to see what made it work. Here, it serves as an isolated piece of information, just like another beloved New Vegas feature, which I will talk about as we slide to the end. I felt tricked by the game when I saw the reputation screen. All these main and side factions, all these numbers and nothing to do with them. The reputation screen in Fallout New Vegas was a solid step in the right direction. Why did they not take additional steps here? Nothing changes except the vendor prices, and they attack you on site with very low reputation. Vendors unlock special mods if you have high reputation, but I think I only bought one single special mod. That's it. Why are the Iconoclasts a major faction when they have one hideout on Monarch, which is an insignificant planet in Halcyon? You can say it is because they appear at the Battle of the Hoover Dam in the end, but I can say they appear because they are listed as a main faction. It's a dead end. The fact that deserters of Edgewater hate my guts serves no purpose, because I won't be coming to Edgewater ever again. Why do I need to see this information? It is not because I dislike Edgewater or anything, but because there's literally nothing to do there anymore. I felt little connection because I wasn't involved in deciding who was good or bad. The game was just telling me. I know nothing has changed in my absence. They mentioned how you could wear their Spacer's Choice hat as if that would change anything. What purpose does the tension between Udon Bedford and Junlei Tennyson serve, other than saying, yep, we have a board versus people conflict here on Groundbreaker as well, and adding 15 seconds to the endgame slides, which we will come later on. You help repair the exhaust vents of the Groundbreaker. Is there a Spacer's Choice headquarters somewhere? Do I need an amount of reputation before the CEO comes to recruit me in his private service, ordering me to infiltrate CMP boards to steal their secrets? While there are quests in the game which lets you do specific work for companies, they lead to nowhere. The only difference between them and a regular Joe sending me on a fetch quest is that in addition to XP, I gain reputation, which doesn't change much. These companies feel distinct when people are forced to recite their slogans every now and then, which was ingenious and reminded me of Subway from the TV show Community.
Any business operating for profit on Greendale's campus must be at least 51% owned by a registered Greendale student.
That's too bad, Dean. I don't recall seeing Subway in my premenopausal post-feminist experiential marketing class.
Actually, I'm on the wait list for the pre-min post-fem X-Mark.
Who are you?
Gang, meet Greendale's newest student, Subway.
Your name is Subway.
Yep. Using a groundbreaking but surprisingly legal process known as corpohumanization, real people such as myself are now allowed to represent the collective humanity of business owners. I have contractually waived my birth identity and am now a man and student named Subway.
I don't believe this. Come on.
Small-scale moments like these separated Spacer's Choice from being some other oppressive incumbent power. Before the game was released, Obsidian was talking about how different corporations would have different guns and modifications. While I accidentally stumbled upon unlocked mods, thanks to my reputation, the game's lack of challenge never forces you to explore these concepts. There's just too much loot and too little challenge to be aware of things like that. The reputation system template of New Vegas is copied here, one by one, and it helps with little. You can go through the entire game without checking your reputation, and while it was not crucial in Fallout New Vegas, it served some purpose here, as was disguising yourself with uniforms, which again does little here. What they should have done was to reflect the asymmetry between factions, how the board is the dominant power and how pockets of groups fought against its grip, including smaller companies like Monarch Stellar Industries, which occupy a middle ground between benevolent corporatism and tyrannical slavery. The narrative is clearly designed around this. Companies are assholes and make innocent rebels suffer. That's what the whole game is about. The board should have reacted as you helped revolutionaries out. Instead of listing every group of humanity as a faction, they should have given greater focus on the board because this is what the game is about, right? From the first moment Phineas starts cursing at the board, aka the Galactic Empire, the moment you enter the Edgewater concentration camp, it is about the board and how the player deals with it. Then why does the reputation system not reflect that? Why does the board carry the same weight as the iconoclasts with regards to change? Why am I looking at decreased vendor prices when all property is owned by these private companies that offer me nothing but isolated quests that don't have an effect on anything? Don't get me wrong, I hope you don't think that my problem is that the game isn't too much New Vegas. I said that this game was not New Vegas in space and it ought not to be. My problem is how they copied so many features from Fallout New Vegas without adapting these features. They had no confidence in themselves when creating original mechanics that would help the Outer Worlds become a better game within itself. This game is not about a land caught between the NCR from the west and the Legion from the east and an emerging player called Mr. House, where all hell breaks loose. It is about a human colony run by private corporations where law is not based on the summation of tradition and necessity, but on corporate priorities. The Outer Worlds, especially with a criminally short main quest, should have focused on these smaller local conflicts perhaps, and adapted the whole game accordingly. Instead, what it does is to have the main quest on life support for the first 3/4 of the game, then crank everything up to 9,000 in the last moments. While I understand how I have to complete side quests so the game has some pace, I cannot be expected to complete every single quest in an area before moving on just so the game's pacing feels right. Before I talk about the endgame and reach the climax of our analysis, we have to give a quick intermission where we talk about the main antagonists of the game. Before said intermission, I have to make a quick point about Phineas and Obsidian's odd choice about illusions. You can sell Phineas out and disclose his location to the board, but they won't storm his laboratory unless the main quest requires it so. You can do nothing about it, and they will still storm it even if you don't sell out. At the exact same points. I do not categorize this under the all is an illusion in a game aspect, but under the laziness aspect of the shortcomings in this game. It is already obvious that nothing will happen to Phineas as he's an essential NPC, but the game makes sure that what happens to Phineas is independent of your will, no matter what. You're not God, of course you cannot do everything, but it is awkward that Obsidian has put an illusion here instead of honestly saying no and removing the option to sell them out. They honestly did not think that the players would not notice this, especially their players. Perhaps they felt it was safer to include the option anyway, since otherwise people would ask why they couldn't rat him out. Nevertheless, they do not go for alternative routes because Phineas and the Hope must survive until the end. The lack of interactivity within the main quest will bite us pretty hard in 2 minutes. This section is going to be hell as I try to wrap everything up before the endgame. Keep in mind the original premise. Positive features that have worked in New Vegas have been taken out of context, turned into fundamental features of the Outer Worlds, and therefore hinder the game from realizing itself. The main antagonists of the game are rushed plot reveals. There, I've said it. In a short game with a shorter main quest, meticulously designed to be off-paced, we have 2 rushed plot reveals. Both should carry an immense weight, but fail to do so. 2 huge events in the game.
Everyone will die.
What? Halcyon is starving? Wow. So
Earth has gone dark.
what? The Earth has gone. Starvation of Halcyon is an existential threat of gargantuan proportions, threatening the presence of a species within an entire solar system. Not only is this revealed towards the very end, but the player takes no active part in combating it. Sure, you can choose who combats it, but it is so keen on showing you how brilliant Phineas's plan is and how horrible the board is that it removes the weight of the whole decision. You can even tell Phineas how his plan is basically hoping that other colonists have a plan, and the game still tries to justify it. I felt like a total moron when I helped the board on my second playthrough. It befitted my dumb character, I suppose. If they wanted to include this huge piece of information and made sure that the player cared about it, the following could have worked. Phineas wakes you up, tells you the colony is starving and that we need to revive the scientists on hope to find a cure. Right out the bat. He tried reviving people before, you were the first one to succeed. It is later revealed in the game that he sort of knew about the crisis anyway, so the game doesn't change much with the new approach. The entire main quest could revolve around this, only then you have the problem of Oblivion or Skyrim. A Daedric prince or dragons themselves are invading the world and you are busy fencing goods at the Thieves Guild. This is why I am for removing such high stakes altogether and let the game be about dialogue, minor events, and smaller victories. Back to the nutrition crisis. The opportunity for an early reveal is doing the SubLight questline. One Dr. Chartrand, I'm just going to say Chartrand. One Dr. Chartrand is apparently working to solve this very problem. But because it is a SubLight questline, not only many players won't see this early reveal, but you don't also put a lot of weight on it. This is a very interesting quest, because regardless of sending Dr. Chartrand to Phineas to work together, or let her continue to work for the board, she is never seen or mentioned again. I went back to Phineas's lab to make sure she was hard at work, but nothing. On top of this, the quest itself begins with the suspicion of aliens, and Dr. Chartrand's terminal sort of points at this. She is gleeful that she has found intelligent life. So, what's going on? She does not appear in any of the ending slides either. The question has to be asked, was she an alien after all? Escaped right in front of our eyes, never seen or heard of again? Or was this a loose end? I have to consider this as a major oversight, however, and not some elaborate Easter egg or a teaser for The Outer Worlds 2. The game is filled with moments where the quest has just gotten interesting, but it ends abruptly. Without the SubLight questline, you learn about the nutrition crisis in Chairman Rockwell's video, who is also the most criminally underused character in the game. If you work for Phineas, you break into his office and find an unedited video, or Sofia Akande of the board shows it to you. While the chairman's video was absolutely hilarious and revealed a lot about his character in a very short video, it sacrifices immersion for pure comedic value when Akande shows the player the unedited version. Is that version published to the public as well? If not, then why does Akande show it to you? Moments like these break the already weak tension elements in the plot. Let's talk about a second rushed plot reveal to have a clear understanding of it before we move on to the Battle of Hoover Dam. Communication with the Earth has gone dark for 3 years and Halcyon is completely isolated. You learn this fact at the very end of the game. The cherry on top is that a vessel carrying half of the board's army and Earth's directors have disappeared. I don't consider this part of the Outer Worlds because it is no more than a hook for the Outer Worlds 2, or maybe some DLC that I'm okay with. The issue is that this hook again makes everything else look extremely insignificant because it is such an existential threat. I will talk more about the Earth in the last section of our video.
I fucking swear, if someone doesn't give me something to
Remind players of Hoover Dam.
all of you will find yourselves violently unemployed.
We have introduced the two major reveals of the second act. Now let's talk about Tartarus and remind the title of the video for one last time. I'm going to make a bold claim here and say that Tartarus is the result of the developers saying we need to end the game with a large battle, like Hoover Dam, and make sure the players' allies aid them in the battle. That's it. That was the only condition. Obsidian warned everyone not to look at the game with the lenses of Fallout New Vegas, but their entire second act is based on this. You cannot go to Tartarus earlier, because no matter what you do, Adjutant Akande won't arrest Phineas until you advanced in the questline. If I am the most resourceful servant of the board, then just give me the green light and I'll smoke the motherfucker myself. Akande has no conscience. The game doesn't need to tell you that it is a point of no return before Tartarus, because experienced players can see it from a mile away once the game takes you to Hope. The moment you realize that you cannot sell Phineas out earlier is the moment you realize that his capture will be endgame content. And if you are Sherlock enough, You can deduce that the locked prison planet of Tartarus will be the location of the showdown. Why did Fallout New Vegas have the Battle of Hoover Dam? Because the dam itself was the single most important strategic location in the game. Electricity in post-apocalyptia is invaluable at worst, and everything in the game led to the second Battle of Hoover Dam. NCR was expecting it, the Legion was preparing for it, and House was waiting on the Platinum chip to mobilize against both of them. As you do quests for factions, you are in anticipation of the battle and ask them to aid you in the fight. When the battle begins, your mind is not left with Benny, or why you got shot in the head, or how Brotherhood of Steel fits within the larger picture. Your sole focus is the battle. The main quest slowly but surely evolved into this, and all you can think about is the future of this trip. And the moment the music kicks in, you get all you need. Perhaps I should here mention Justin Bell for a great soundtrack, although at times too ominous like the Nazi Germany soundtrack of Edgewater Town. I loved his work in Pillars of Eternity, and I loved his work here. Meanwhile, the level is designed as an assault battle, no matter which side you pick, I'm talking about Tartarus here, and while it tries to mimic the storming of the dam from Fallout New Vegas, it certainly lacks half of the weight. There are two options here. You either go in to save Phineas, or you go in to confront Phineas, who has the total control of the prison. Apparently, Phineas can rally and then completely occupy the safest location in the in the solar system on his own. Also, maybe that's why half of the board's army has conveniently disappeared before the game. You don't even fight pockets of well-coordinated riots when you reach Tartarus working for the board. Phineas and the prisoners have already captured the entirety of the complex, and all that changes is that the unit models don't say corporate commander but say prisoner something. I could have accepted this had they shown the Pablo Escobar side of Phineas more, instead of how he pushes buttons and the speaker doesn't activate properly all the time. He could have surprised us with how criminally savvy Phineas is. The problem with Tartarus begins before the battle starts. Unless you're a Season 8 Game of Thrones character, there's no way you would survive a frontal assault to the most secure place in the solar system. I thought I would have to sneak inside, and felt even smart when I asked for the ID cartridge of the guard for my holographic shroud. All of a sudden, soldiers of Junlei Tennyson from the Groundbreaker chanted my name and charged the prison. How? And why? This isn't Battle of Hoover Dam where the two of the most powerful factions in America come to clash. I did not tell these people to come fight with me. For all I know, they broke my elaborate scheme to sneak inside. Even if they love Phineas so much, it is weird that they all decided to break him out at the same time, without any coordination or without talking to the player. Working for the board probably means it is good to shoot profligate prisoners, sure, but why do I have to kill the innocent members of the law force when I'm trying to get Phineas out? I don't have to, personally, but these douchebags whom I helped out on Monarch don't like common sense, so they don't stand down when I say I want to infiltrate the place and minimize the casualties. The game forces this sequence to be the battle for Tartarus, when it could have been easily, rightfully, reasonably, common-sensely be infiltration of Tartarus or something. What made the Battle of Hoover Dam that ultimate showdown of epic proportions is not the cool locale and incoming allies. It was a crucial strategic location. The entire setting and the main quest slowly but steadily raised the stakes. The player not only heard but saw firsthand the effects of this conflict. The penultimate level of the game is woefully rushed and undercooked. This game has had 3 years of development. Double of Fallout New Vegas. What are we supposed to feel in Tartarus? Should we think on our friend or foe Phineas? If we did the quest right, then we just found out that the Halcyon system is starving. The discrepancy between the player's immediate motivations and the overarching super crucial existential crises do not fit together for the final battle. What you are left with is a game that has betrayed its original premise by not wandering too far away from it, but also not allowing you to interact with the remains enough. Because the main quest is so short, the Fallout New Vegas formula doesn't work. The two rushed twists and the irrelevancy of the final battle to the rest of the game are in total contrast of what was the case in New Vegas. But people love the final battle, so might as well put it into our brand new title, right? We know during Tartarus that whom we save and speak to will determine the immediate future of Halcyon. We go to save or kill Phineas, but through these actions determine what the game ending will be. Not only Tartarus sequence itself, but the entire Halcyon starvation problem feels like a problem specifically placed, designed, so the player could solve it, so there would be something substantial and with emotional gravitas to show at the ending slides. Yes, another beloved and crucial part of New Vegas was how at the end of the DLCs and the main quest, you were shown endgame slides, elaborating on longer-term consequences of your actions. Halcyon's starvation problem is not revealed until towards the end. The only thing the player can interact with this issue is by supporting Phineas or the board, who have a different approach to solve the issue. Your choice is reflected on the ending slides, but what for? For me, the nutrition crisis exists solely to enrich the ending slides, because otherwise it would have been only about the fate of Hope. And without this crisis, the board has no reason to be Satan, to kill all the colonists in Cyrosleep. Again, Halcyon could well have a nutrition crisis, but the conditions of its introduction are forced and merely supplementary, contrary to a proper existential threat. Of course, now the board wants to use the Hope. Of course, it contains many scientists that Phineas can revive. Why is the board the most incompetent faction there is? They did colonize a solar system by themselves after all, right? While 70 years is long enough that decay and corruption became dominant, I cannot believe at the lengths the board goes to screw everything up. There is no dichotomy here between the board and other factions. Contrary to what Obsidian thinks, the ending slides of Fallout New Vegas worked under certain conditions. You cannot just expect people to look at the ending slides and congratulate the developer for reflecting choices. Certainly not because the Fallout series were acquainted with slides conveying information and it was a nice touch to reflect choices in Vault-Tec-esque slides, but because the player had far greater interactivity within the game world. Locations were far more dynamic. The player had reasons to visit a location they long finished. This is perhaps a secondary positive effect of the open world game design of New Vegas, where you might fast travel to a location you finished long before to walk someplace else, and you can see how the location has changed. This, among others, is absent in the Outer Worlds. I wish they could accept this fact and have a system suited for the self-contained maps they have. I did not felt moved by the ending slides at all. I did not feel approaching the end of a saga, handing over the reins to Obsidian because some narrative resolution was needed to bring everything full circle. Here, there is nothing to be brought full circle. The most important slides that we are shown are on issues that we learned shortly before the game ended anyway. Just like winning a battle but losing it in the next cutscene is terrible, so is showing slides when there's no proper interactivity. Both exist because the game either can't give the player proper agency, or because the gap between what the player has experienced and what they should have experienced cannot be closed. The slides are not a testament to Halcyon and the player character, but merely exist to provide a consistent narrative resolution and minimal satisfaction to a rushed and off-paced questline. I think this is the point where people will disagree with me most, but I can't shake the feeling that Obsidian did not fully grasp why people loved New Vegas. Yet they stuck with its features, fearing that improvising and introducing new concepts would scare many people away, and that they needed a hook to attract the audience. People loved everything in New Vegas except its gameplay, so they changed the gameplay and did not touch anything else. It is not uncommon that developers get things wrong. Hell, the developer DICE explicitly said that they had no idea why people loved Battlefield Bad Company 2 so much. Perhaps we never know why something succeeds and make educated guesses and hope we can nail it again next time. All I can say is that Obsidian usually excels at self-contained smaller conflicts thanks to the forward momentum of their dialogue and branching quests, but have issues with the overarching narrative. Perhaps what they should do next time is to avoid the winner-takes-all formula and make everything smaller in scale. Not every game has to be about an existential threat or about the ultimate domination and supremacy of a given setting. When I heard how half of the board's army had disappeared, I thought this was the hook about rallying peoples to bring down the board, because now we know they are at half strength. Again, the circumstances of its introduction feel coincidental. It does nothing other than perhaps justifying how Phineas no-scoped Tartarus, or how the player can basically take over everything without grassroots board and military members showing fierce opposition to this, or how they are the most incompetent organization this side of the galaxy cluster. We are one stop away from concluding this video, and I appreciate that you have come this far without thinking I'm a complete idiot who has nothing worth to say. But for now, let's talk about SubLight and how it betrayed my love. SubLight questline is one of my greatest disappointments. This is pretty subjective territory, but I felt like it genuinely went somewhere but then abruptly ended, like many quests in the game. More than half of the quests in the game feel either incomplete or rushed, when I know Obsidian can do so much better. When I first found out about SubLight, I thought they were this new emerging player that could tackle the board his own way. Lilia Hagen looked smart enough, too ambitious to be merely doing smuggling, and they had their own building right across the board's offices in Groundbreaker. This was going to be a faction that changes the rules of the game and sweep the board, making great use of small opportunities. I had the same feeling when I spoke to Benny from New Vegas. After speaking to him, I was impressed by his wits, as well as his insight on New Vegas. I wanted to see what his plans were. Before I knew it, Benny was caught by Caesar, his fate irreversible. Even if you kill all the 50 guards in Caesar's tent, Benny disappears from the game. When Lilia Hagen mentioned aliens, I thought I was in the right place. I was wrong, and the SubLight questline ended just like that. Several quests like this give you the impression of changing the status quo, but they lead to nowhere. So, here's how the Outer Worlds essentially ends. The nutrition crisis is technically solved either way. Both endings state how the next years were rough and tough, but humanity still wins at the end. They did not take risks with the ending and kept their options open about Halcyon. The Earth in distress thing must be a hook for the Outer Worlds too, right? It is exactly where the first game ends, and regardless of your actions, it is the last word said in the game. It must be a hook, because if not, then the ending slides mean nothing for me. Absolutely nothing. How can you not wonder about the Earth when the slides dismiss all problems on Halcyon by saying, oh, but Halcyon remained stark and survived, regardless of your choices? This is why for the second game I immediately thought of an alien race that came crashing down on Earth 3 years ago, unless we end up just seeing a human or alien EMP blocking communication that poses no immediate existential threat. Various factions of humanity, including the corporate peoples, supranational states, and various free, rebel, deserter groups, unite against the common alien threat, thanks to the quest-frenzied player. And of course, this unfortunately being Fallout New Vegas 3, it would somehow involve the player pulling a 180 at the end, activating a wildcard option, and taking everything for themselves. Like they did in the first Outer Worlds game, right? Sounds pretty unreasonable. The hook for the Outer Worlds 2 is clearly the Earth problem, If it's not a hook, then it should be, because this is clearly huge news that not 1, not 2, but 3 years have passed and there is no communication whatsoever. I cannot imagine a future where Halcyon doesn't send messages to the Earth every single day, ensuring that after some time they should get daily news about one another. Keeping this in mind, we also know how with the Outer Worlds, Obsidian internalizes the whole player ending up as the sole controller of all major institutions in the given setting feature. So, does this mean the player will control the Earth in the wildcard ending, in accordance with this formula? That is awfully out of place. Obsidian has shown that they have stuck to the sole ruler of all wildcard ending formula. They have even used it in their first entry in a brand new title. While it was reasonable in New Vegas thanks to the control of the upgraded Securitron army, which gives you tremendous leverage, it did not feel reasonable for me in Halcyon. Sure, the board has lost half of their army, but still, I was this person who started doing contracts for Sofia Kande, met nobody else on the board, not one single person. And all of a sudden I took control of the board by the game's end. No preparation done beforehand, no talking to insert yes man about a side scheme to rise in ranks, no taking out some board officials to secure my future takeover. If the Earth communications breakdown is a hook, and if this is how the Outer Worlds is going to have as format, then we might end up ruling the Earth. Anyway, Dr. Chatrand and her entry about aliens, then this turning out to be the nutrition crisis, but then we hearing about a cut of communications from Earth really confuses me to make a good guess on this matter. Her disappearance makes guessing even harder. Maybe the next game will take part in some other part of the galaxy, in another solar system. More can be speculated on this matter, but I would like to wrap this thing up before agonizing you more. I think The Outer Worlds is a great game, and I'm excited about The Outer Worlds 2. I only wish Obsidian could capitalize on the Microsoft acquisition, sit back, and ensure that they are prepared to provide for both the plot and its synergy with the entirety of gameplay. How much weight should the ending slides carry? How can the reputation system remain rich in communication, but also more selective about which factions to show? How can they adapt the quest options to areas and peoples themselves, instead of the rigid black or white or persuasion ending? While we have a lot of perk options, I wish they retained the creativity from New Vegas. The flaws that reduce 3 attributes are absolutely pointless, because no way that is worth increased ammo from vendors or increased companion carry weight and so on. Half of the perks are not really useful and you level up quite fast, so I never felt like I ought to get a flaw for a nice perk. It was a step in the right direction, however, and I hope they are able to expand on that. I think companions were a solid improvement. I loved how they interacted with other NPCs around. Important quality of life changes including being able to walk through them. I very appreciated the companions not breaking my sneak, but then it became rather pointless as stealth was never required due to lack of challenge and ridiculously overpowered holographic shroud and ID cartridges. Perhaps next time, instead of thinking, yes, we will put funny companions and each will have one single side quest because that worked in New Vegas, they can utilize the various backgrounds of companions to have larger effects on game choices. It is alright if a companion has more quests than others. But it is not alright when Parvati sends you to 50 fetch quests on 50 different planets. Obsidian should start embracing some asymmetry in their game design, because their worlds are so developed at this point that sticking to symmetry just hurts them. Our world is not symmetrical after all. Not all areas need tyrannical governments, rebel, and wildcard solutions. Not all areas have to have a conflict. Maybe some of them can have a conflict if you do something specific. But it starts to get tedious when you know every single settlement will have warring factions and you have arrived just in time to solve everything. This format sounds exactly like someone trying to copy what Obsidian does good, but fails at realizing it. This is what happened with The Outer Worlds. I guess this is it. Obsidian did not have enough confidence in themselves to make The Outer Worlds this fresh and daring title, and stuck to too many features of New Vegas because people liked them. I really enjoyed spending time with people of Halcyon. I loved the artwork, the science weapons, how almost completely bug-free the whole game was, attention to detail when it comes to sky objects, the list goes on. I hope I will eat everything I've said about this game and Obsidian once The Outer Worlds 2 is released. As for now, I will steal the clever title of a Reddit post on the Outer Worlds subreddit and end this video. The Outer Worlds is the best game I'll never play again. Thank you for watching.